Pause for a moment, because what you are about to hear may change the way you look at your life. The energy of intention begins working before you make a decision, before you speak a word, before you choose fear or courage. You will discover how to stop living on autopilot, recognize your true desires, trust your intuition, and consciously create your own reality. This is a journey through awareness, spiritual power, choice, and inner transformation. Listen closely, because one true intention can change everything. Energy of intention, the art of conscious creation. The energy of intention sometimes begins in a place no one would call a breakthrough. Not in a moment of grand decision, not on a stage, not in the glow of someone else's attention, but somewhere between one breath and the next, when you suddenly realize that for a long time you have been living slightly beside yourself. Maybe you are sitting in the evening on the edge of your bed, still wearing the clothes from the whole day, with only one shoe taken off, and for a few seconds you do not even have the strength to move. Nothing remarkable is happening in the room. Behind the wall, someone slides a chair. Water quietly works inside the radiator. The light from the lamp falls across the floor at an odd angle. And yet, right then, something in you whispers, "I no longer want to pass through my own life like a corridor that does not belong to me." That whisper matters. You do not have to turn it into a promise, a manifesto, or a plan for many months. It is enough that you do not drown it out. A person very often loses touch with themselves, not because they are weak, but because they have learned to respond to the world faster than they can hear their own soul. Someone expects something, so you adjust. Something is proper, so you put on a good face. Something hurts, so you look for something to do, so you will not have to touch it. In this way, days pass, then whole seasons of life, until one day you feel a strange tiredness beneath your skin. It is not ordinary bodily fatigue. It is more like a longing for the self you left somewhere along the way. Intention is not a spell cast upon reality, so that it becomes obedient to your wishes. It is deeper, quieter, and more demanding. It is the quality with which you enter the world before you even speak a word. It is the hidden direction of your gaze, the tone of your decisions, the source of your movement. You can make the same gesture from entirely different places. You can help someone out of love or out of fear that they will stop liking you. You can work with passion or from the belief that without achievement you do not deserve peace. You can remain silent out of wisdom, but also out of fear of rejection. Conscious creation begins when you stop looking only at the outer shape of a choice and begin listening to the energy that carries it. Imagine a person finding an old ticket in the pocket of a coat from a place they traveled to many years ago. A small piece of paper, faded, almost meaningless, and yet suddenly a memory returns. That morning, that conversation, that feeling that a different choice could have been made. This is how our inner traces sometimes work. You carry within you tickets to roads you did not take, to words you did not say, to desires postponed until later. This is not about living in regret. It is rather about seeing that your life is still speaking to you through details. Through the tension in your shoulders when you agree against yourself, through the relief that comes when you finally tell the truth, through the quiet sadness when, once again, you choose what is safe, though no longer alive. Jesus spoke of treasure hidden in a field, and that image can touch something very simple in you. Treasure is not always lying in plain sight. Often, you have to stop, bend down, and recognize value where others see only ordinary soil. Buddha reminded us that suffering begins with clinging, with the tight grasping of what is supposed to provide certainty. Marcus Aurelius returned to inner order amid a world that could not be arranged according to his own will. These figures are not here to form some distant monument. They are like small lamps lit along different paths of the human being who tries to understand where outer chaos ends and one's own choice begins. So perhaps you do not have to fix anything in haste today. Perhaps the first movement is to admit that you long for a life that is more present, not perfect, not one in which you will always be calm, patient, brave, and clear. More present, meaning one in which you will more often notice when you are running away, when you are pretending, when you are handing over the steering wheel of your day to old fears. This awareness is not meant to be a whip. It is meant to be the return of light. When you enter a room at night and turn on a small lamp, You do not shout at the darkness for being dark. You simply allow the shapes to be seen. You can look at yourself in the same way, without accusation but also without further pretending. From this gentle honesty, the first true act of creation is born. It does not mean that the world will immediately respond according to your script. It means, rather, that you stop being merely an echo of circumstances. When someone hurts you, you can see the reaction before it becomes a word. When the temptation appears to choose someone else's comfort over your own truth again, you can feel a small threshold within you. When fear begins to paint the future in dark colors, you can ask whether it is truly showing reality, or only an old memory dressed up as a premonition. This is how life is reclaimed, not with one grand gesture, but through an increasingly conscious inhabiting of the moment that is here now. And perhaps right now, as you listen, it is worth allowing yourself the simplest question: from what place do I want to live from now on? You do not have to answer beautifully. You do not have to answer bravely. A true answer may be awkward, cracked, whispered. It may sound like this: I want to stop betraying myself. I want to learn to trust what I feel. I want to choose less from fear and more from love. Such an intention, if it is sincere, begins to change the way you sit, breathe, look, and listen. No one around you may notice it, but you will feel that, within your inner world, someone has gently come home. When you return home within yourself, you are not always greeted only by warmth and peace. Sometimes confusion appears first. Suddenly you see how many things you did in order not to feel lonely, how many times you confused acceptance with being needed, how many decisions you made not because they were true, but because they gave temporary relief. This can hurt. Yet pain that reveals truth can become the beginning of healing. A person can live for a long time inside a poorly fitted life, the way one wears a coat that is too tight. One can walk in it. Yes, it serves some purpose, but every movement reminds you that something is restricting you. Only when you take it off your shoulders do you feel how heavy it really was. In intention, the source matters most. It is the source that gives direction. If your intention grows out of shame, even success can taste bitter. If it flows from love, even difficulty does not take away its meaning. You may desire money, recognition, closeness, health, a beautiful home, creative work, a calmer rhythm of the day. None of these desires is shallow or deep in itself. Depth begins with the question, what in me truly wants this? Do I want money because I long for the freedom to create and for safety, or because I believe that only then will I finally be somebody? Do I want love because my heart is ready to meet another human being, or because I do not know how to sit alone with myself at one table? Am I striving for growth because life is calling me, or because I am still trying to improve my face in the mirror of other people's expectations? Jung wrote about the shadow, but the shadow does not have to be a terrifying basement full of monsters. Sometimes it is like a drawer into which, for years, you have thrown things without looking: a single button, an unanswered letter, a broken pencil, a photograph you do not want to throw away. When you finally pull it open, you see not only clutter but a story. Your shadow also carries a story. Jealousy may tell you about a talent you never allowed yourself to develop. Anger may show the place where you were nice for too long at the expense of truth. Indifference may cover exhaustion from constantly feeling too much. You do not have to understand everything immediately. It is enough to stop treating your difficult emotions like intruders that must be thrown out before they have time to say anything. Sometimes a person wants to have a pure intention, but does not want to look at their own motivation. It is a little like trying to pour spring water into a cup at the bottom of which there is still sediment from bitterness drunk long ago. The water is still water, but the taste changes. That is why spirituality without honesty quickly becomes decoration. One can speak beautifully about light while inside cultivating a need for control. One can declare gratitude while secretly despising one's own weakness. One can meditate, then return home and punish loved ones with silence. You do not notice these contradictions in order to condemn yourself. You see them because the soul longs for coherence. It tires of pretending more than it tires of admitting the truth. Think of a person who for years collected elegant notebooks, each one bought with the hope of a new beginning. On the first pages, beautiful sentences, careful plans, promises of a morning without chaos. Then, empty pages. The next notebook was supposed to be the right one, but the paper changed, not the intention. Only one day that person takes an ordinary scrap of paper from an envelope that once held a bill and writes one honest sentence. I am afraid that if I slow down, I will feel how tired I really am. That is when something real begins. Not in perfect packaging, but in an unembellished encounter with oneself. Your life does not need another ornamental beginning if underneath it you are still running away from the same truth. Viktor Frankl understood in extreme conditions that a human being can find meaning even where the world seems to take it away. This is not about romanticizing suffering. Pain does not become good simply because something can be drawn from it. Yet within the human being there is an ability that goes beyond automatic reaction. Between what happens to you and who you become in response to it, there is sometimes a very narrow opening. Conscious intention widens that opening. It gives you a moment in which you do not have to answer with an old pattern. You do not have to turn hurt into attack. You do not have to hand your whole heart over to disappointment. You can say, "This hurts me, but I do not want to build my identity out of pain." This is how motivation begins to be cleansed. It is not a sterile process. It does not smell of perfection. It is more like the work of someone who, after a flood, is cleaning up a small antiquarian bookstore. The books are damp, some pages stuck together, mud lies across the floor. And yet among the damaged volumes there are sentences that can still save someone. In you too there are fragments flooded by old fear, but not everything has been destroyed. Beneath the layer of defense, tenderness still exists. Beneath the need for control lives the desire for safety. Beneath anger often beats a heart that went unheard for too long. The more attentively you see this, the less you have to fight yourself blindly. Then intention gains warmth. It ceases to be a tense demand placed upon the future and becomes a way of caring for direction. You can want change and, at the same time, not hate the place where you are. You can desire more without despising what you already have. You can move forward without trampling the previous version of yourself. This matters deeply because many people try to develop as if they were escaping from a burning house. Yet not every part of the old life is a prison. Some things were shelter before you learned to build more spaciously. Thank them if you can, and then go. With greater awareness, with less compulsion, with an intention that does not have to shout in order to be strong. When intention stops shouting, you begin to recognize the voice of intuition. It does not always arrive as certainty. Sometimes it is subtle, like a change in the temperature of the air just before rain. You enter a situation and everything seems correct, yet something inside gently steps back. At another time, reason lists all the arguments for why you should not take a certain path, and still, somewhere deep within, there is a calm pull. Not euphoria, not compulsion, rather a quiet magnetism of truth. Intuition does not need theatrical effects, because it is not competing for your attention. It is fear that often has to raise its voice in order to impersonate wisdom. It is worth learning to distinguish intuition from an old wound. Wounds also send signals. They may say, "Do not trust anyone, withdraw, attack first, do not show desire, do not try, because it will hurt again." They sound convincing because they refer to experiences that truly cost you something. Intuition is different. Even when it warns you, it does not humiliate you. Even when it says stop, it does not close the whole world inside one catastrophic vision. Its voice carries simplicity. Fear often produces many scenarios at once, like someone scattering a pile of old photographs across the floor. Intuition picks up one of them and says, "Look here." You can learn this difference by observing the body, not as a machine for executing plans, but as a wise companion that has been speaking for a long time, though rarely listened to. The body knows when your breath becomes shallow at the mention of someone's name. It knows when your stomach tightens before a meeting you agreed to out of politeness. It knows when your eyes soften at the thought of an idea that seems impractical, yet brings you more alive than everything that is reasonable. Not every tension means a wrong direction, because sometimes growth touches uncertain places. But the body always brings data that the mind alone cannot gather. In conscious creation, the point is not to silence reason. It is to make it stop pretending to be the only advisor. Imagine a person standing in a tailor's workshop before a piece of fabric. On the table lies silk in a color that cannot be named with one word. A little ash, a little heather, a little evening sky. The pattern says one thing, the client expects another, and the seamstress's hands feel that the fabric will fall better if the cut goes slightly differently. There is no proof yet, only experience, touch, an inner sense of resistance and softness. This is often how intuition works. It does not disregard form, but it senses the life of the material. You too are such material. It is not enough to place someone else's pattern upon yourself and cut everything according to a ready-made line. You have to feel where your life truly falls. Leonardo da Vinci observed the world with an attentiveness that did not separate science from wonder. He looked at the swirls of water, the arrangement of leaves, the muscles beneath skin, the flight of birds. Because of this, he saw connections where others saw separate phenomena. Your intuition also develops through observation. If you spend whole days rushing through noise, feeding your mind with random stimuli, and giving yourself not even a moment of silence, it becomes difficult to hear more delicate signals. It is like trying to recognize the melody of a flute in the middle of a marketplace full of shouting. You do not have to escape life. It is enough to bring into it moments in which nothing has to answer immediately. Sometimes the greatest act of trusting intuition consists in not acting. The world often pushes, decide, answer, choose, define yourself, show that you know. Yet some truths need time to settle to the bottom, like fine dust in a glass of water. If you keep stirring it, you will continue to see cloudiness. Patience is not passivity. It is respect for the process by which a decision matures. Steve Jobs spoke about connecting the dots only in retrospect. When you look back, you often see that something that seemed like a delay was preparing you for the right movement. Not every pause is cowardice. Sometimes the soul refuses haste because it senses that a decision must flow from a fuller place. There are moments, however, when intuition leaves no comfortable side door. You know, not because everything is certain, but because continuing to pretend that you do not know would become a betrayal of yourself. Perhaps it concerns a relationship that has long fed more fear than love. Perhaps a job in which your creativity is quietly withering. Perhaps a way of life that looks correct, but each day takes a little light from your eyes. Then intention and courage meet in one point. You do not need guarantees. You only need to stop asking fear for permission to tell the truth. This is difficult, because fear always promises safety in exchange for resignation. But over time, you notice that the price is too high. Trusting intuition does not mean that you will always avoid mistakes. Sometimes you will confuse the voice of the heart with the hunger for immediate relief. At times, you will call something destiny when it was only fascination. That is part of the learning. It does not cancel your sensitivity, it teaches it precision. What matters is not to close yourself cynically after such an experience. A person who once burned themselves on fire may never again approach warmth, but then they remain cold their whole life. Wisdom lies in distinguishing the flame that warms from the one that devours. Your intuition matures through contact with reality, not through escape from it. Eventually, you begin to feel that life speaks to you not only through great events. Sometimes, it speaks through a sentence overheard by chance in a queue, through a book that falls from a shelf just when you are thinking of something completely different, through a bird sitting motionless on the railing of a parking lot, as if reminding you that even in concrete, there is still the breath of the world. This is not about forcing signs into everything. That would quickly become another form of control. It is rather about a softness of attention that allows daily life to reveal meaning. Then intention no longer pushes life like a heavy cart uphill. It begins to cooperate with it, listening to a rhythm you had not heard before. Listening to the rhythm of life requires courage, because that rhythm does not always match your plans. Sometimes you want to speed up, and everything asks you to slow down. At times, you long for a clear answer, yet you receive a period of suspension that seems empty, though in reality something in you is rearranging itself. A person often fears such spaces because they have learned to measure worth by movement. If no action can be seen, anxiety appears. Maybe I am wasting time, maybe I am lazy, maybe others are passing me by. And yet a seed beneath the earth is not inactive simply because no one can see the root. Inner transformation also has invisible phases. This does not mean you should escape into comfortable waiting. There is a difference between ripening and postponing life because of fear. Ripening contains quiet work. Postponement tastes like contraction. When you are ripening, even if you are not taking great steps, something deepens. You learn, observe, organize, speak with yourself more honestly. When you are running away, you circle around the same excuses and feel your energy fade. Intention helps you recognize this because it does not ask only, "What am I doing?" It also asks, "Is my inaction trust or fear dressed as common sense?" Think of a watchmaker leaning over the mechanism of an old clock. He does not strike it with a hammer, does not push the hands forward with his finger, does not complain that the small elements are too delicate. He knows that precision requires patience. Sometimes a speck of dust is enough to make the whole movement uneven. In the same way, one small belief within you can influence an entire life. I cannot disappoint anyone. I must not ask for help. If I show weakness, I will lose respect. Love must be maintained through effort. These sentences function like invisible gears. You can change the outer decorations, and still the mechanism will measure out the same fear until you see it. Conscious creation, then, is not only about imagining the future. It is also about recognizing the inner laws according to which you have lived without asking whether they are true. Einstein was able to question assumptions that others considered almost untouchable. In your life, too, there are such private assumptions. Perhaps you have always believed that you must be strong, otherwise everything will fall apart. Perhaps you believe that rest is deserved only after all duties are completed, and since duties never end, rest remains forever postponed. Perhaps you confuse peace with having no needs. Questioning such a belief can be more revolutionary than changing your address, job, or appearance. When you begin to see these hidden rules, responsibility appears. This word can feel heavy, as though it meant being guilty for everything that happened to you. That is not what it means. You are not responsible for someone else's cruelty, for chance, for every wound that entered your life. You are, however, responsible for whether you allow old pain to keep speaking through your mouth, choosing your relationships, closing your heart, and calling it safety. Responsibility is the reclaiming of influence where influence truly exists. It does not give you control over all reality, but it restores your participation in the shape of your own presence. Gandhi showed that intention without action can remain a beautiful idea, while action without pure intention can become violence dressed elegantly. His path reminds us that coherence is not convenient. It requires values to come down from the lips into the hands, into daily decisions, into the way one treats an opponent, an employee, a neighbor, oneself. Your field of action may be small, but the laws are similar. If you desire peace, look at how you feed your inner wars. If you want truth, examine the small places where you choose half-sentences and evasions. If you speak of love, listen to the tone with which you address yourself after failure. That is where intention is tested. An image may help. A person learning to swim in a lake at dawn. The water is cool, the bottom can still be felt near the shore, and farther out, depth begins. At first, the body tenses against the water, as if trying to defeat it. Only after a while does it discover that staying afloat requires not struggle, but trust, the spreading of weight, and entering a different kind of cooperation. Life is similar. When you are tense, every wave seems like a threat. When you learn presence, you do not stop meeting waves, but you lose less energy fighting the simple fact that they exist. Then intention becomes movement with the water, not against everything. Responsibility for your own energy also appears in what you feed with attention. Attention is one of the most precious resources you have. Wherever you place it, part of your life flows there. You can spend hours analyzing other people's judgments, comparing your beginnings with someone else's middle, returning to one conversation for so long that it becomes larger than the whole day. Or you can notice this movement and gently take your attention back. Not brutally, not with anger. The way you lift a small child from the ground after they stumble in a park. Come on, we are going back. Your awareness needs this kind of tender discipline. Over time, you discover that creation is not the forcing of an outcome, but participation in life with greater clarity. You take a step, listen to the response, correct your direction, and take another step. You do not have to see the whole map. It is enough that you stop walking with your eyes closed. And when uncertainty comes, because it will, you do not have to treat it as a sign that you have gone astray. Uncertainty often accompanies every departure from an old shape. If your intention is true, it will lead you through the fog not like a noisy commander, but like a hand on your shoulder. Quiet, present, enough for the next step. The next step very often leads into relationships, because it is near another human being that we most easily see how much awareness is in us and how much old reflex. You may be calm in solitude, noble in imagination, patient in theory, but it takes only one sentence spoken more sharply than you expected for a whole history to awaken in you. Suddenly, you are not reacting only to this moment. Your memory is reacting, your unmet needs, your earlier disappointments. This does not mean you are immature. It means that a human being is deep, layered, woven from many encounters, including those that were never closed. Relationships are like mirrors, but not smooth, merciless ones that show only the face. They are more like shop windows passed at night on an empty street. In them, you see both yourself and the light behind the glass, your own outline and what exists on the other side. Another person shows you your longing for closeness, your impatience, your need for control, your capacity to give, your fear of rejection, your tenderness that you might not notice on your own. Not every reflection is truth. Sometimes someone looks through their own pain and distorts your image. Even then you can ask, what does this situation stir in me, and what intention do I want to bring, instead of only defending the old self? Boundaries are extremely important here. Many people confuse spirituality with constant availability. They think that because they want to live from the heart, they should understand everything, forgive everything, always be soft, always be open. This is not love, but slow disappearance under a beautiful name. True closeness needs space, just as a river needs banks in order not to turn into a floodplain. The bank is not against the water. It helps it flow. Your boundary does not have to be an attack on another person. It can be care for the truth of the relationship. It says, I want to be with you honestly, but I do not want to abandon myself in order to maintain the appearance of agreement. Notice how the intention with which you set a boundary changes everything. You can say no from a desire to punish, or you can say it out of respect for life. You can leave while inwardly slamming every door, or you can step away with pain, but without wishing destruction upon someone. You can name someone's behavior clearly without turning that person into the entire definition of evil. This requires maturity, because the ego loves quick verdicts. They provide a feeling of superiority. The soul prefers truth that does not need to humiliate. Mandela, leaving prison, carried within himself an experience of harm that cannot be simplified. Yet his life showed that a human being can refuse to let the past entirely write the future. In your relationships, a similar freedom may look much quieter. It may mean that you do not answer a jab with another jab, although you know exactly where to strike. It may mean that after years of explaining yourself, you stop presenting evidence of your worth to someone who does not want to see it anyway. Sometimes freedom appears in a sentence spoken calmly at the table, over a bowl of unfinished soup. I do not want to speak this way anymore. It is not a movie scene. No one stands up, music does not play, there is no grand finale. And yet inside you, something regains its upright posture. Love without awareness easily becomes hunger. Hunger says, give me yourself so I do not have to feel emptiness. Love says, let us meet because we are both alive. Hunger attaches itself to replies, the speed of messages, tone of voice, proof. Love also needs care and presence, but it does not want to possess another person like medicine. It is worth being honest with yourself. Sometimes what you call great love is a dramatic search for relief in a place you do not want to embrace alone. You do not have to be ashamed of this. Most people learn love through mistakes, through attachment, through giving too much or demanding too much. Awareness does not remove romance. It allows love to stop being a battlefield of two wounds. Oprah Winfrey has often spoken about the power of telling your own story differently than through shame. This is also important in relationships. As long as you see yourself only as the one who was abandoned, used, misunderstood, or overlooked, Your heart may unconsciously seek confirmation of that story. You will choose people who know the same script because pain can feel familiar, and the familiar is often confused with the safe. A new intention may sound like this: I want to learn relationships in which I do not have to earn basic tenderness. This simple sentence can change the criteria of choice. Suddenly, you no longer ask only whether someone desires you. You ask who you become beside this person. The most difficult relationship, however, remains the one with yourself. You can leave many people, change your environment, end certain arrangements, but you take yourself everywhere. If a court still operates inside, even the most beautiful place will have hard chairs. That is why the intention of love must descend into your inner dialogue. How do you speak to yourself after an unsuccessful conversation? What happens inside you when you see a photograph of yourself and instinctively begin judging your body? Can you receive a compliment without immediately making it smaller with a joke? These are details, but a home is built from details. You can furnish it harshly or with tenderness. Every day you choose some piece of furniture. Tenderness toward yourself is not a soft escape from life. It is one of the most practical forms of courage. It is often easier to rush yourself than to hear what truly hurts. Easier to call yourself lazy than to admit that your body has been operating at the edge of exhaustion for a long time. Simpler to say I am hopeless than to see that you learn to demand the impossible from yourself, because praise once came only after you exceeded your own strength. Severity gives the illusion of control. Tenderness requires meeting, and meeting yourself can be more intimate than many conversations with another person. You can begin by noticing the voice that comments on your life from within. Is it like a coach who sees your potential and helps you return to the path, or like someone standing over you with a cold expression? This voice often was not born in you. It came from outside, from home, school, a first job, a relationship in which love was mixed with criticism. Over time, however, you began to confuse it with your own conscience. True conscience does not humiliate. It shows where you have moved away from truth and invites you to repair. The inner critic, by contrast, does not seek wisdom. It seeks someone to blame. Most often, it finds you. Think of a person who, for years, keeps a coat in the wardrobe that once belonged to someone dear. The fabric has long lost that person's scent. The buttons are loose. The cut does not fit their body, and yet they cannot give it away because memory lives in that coat. In a similar way, you sometimes wear other people's sentences. Do not exaggerate. Others have it worse. There is always a problem with you. You have to be sensible. Perhaps they no longer belong to anyone specific, but they still cover your reactions. Conscious intention allows you to ask, is this belief truly mine, or have I worn it for so long that I have stopped feeling its weight? Not every inherited sentence deserves to keep a place in your heart. Maya Angelou reminds us through her life that a reclaimed voice has the power of transformation not only personally, but deeply humanly. Voice is not only sound, it is the ability to stand on your own side without hatred toward the world. When you tell yourself the truth, you begin to exist more fully. You do not have to announce everything to others immediately. At first, an inner sentence is enough. This wounded me. This was too much for me. This is what I longed for, but was afraid to name. Many hearts suffer not because they do not know the answer, but because for years they were not given permission to hear it. Healing the relationship with yourself also includes the body, not as a project to improve, not as a display, not as a problem that constantly needs correcting, but as a home through which you experience the world. How many times have you spoken to your body in the language of complaint? Too slow, too weak, too large, not attractive enough, tired at the wrong moment. And all this time, it has carried you through days, protected you, warned you, stored pain you could not live through then. The body does not need idealization. It needs listening. Sometimes its wisdom appears as sleepiness, sometimes as a headache after a conversation, sometimes as reluctance toward a place where your soul has been shrinking for a long time. Imagine a gardener who does not shout at a plant for not blooming in January. He checks the soil, the light, the water, the temperature. He understands that growth is a response to conditions, not only to will. You too develop under conditions. If you feed yourself constant tension, comparison, and lack of sleep, it is hard to expect your heart to bloom with peace. This does not mean you can always change everything immediately. Not everyone has the luxury of ideal circumstances, but almost always, you can begin with one act of care, a slower meal, refusing one unnecessary conversation, a few minutes of silence before sleep, admitting that you need help. Care is intention embodied in matter. Mother Teresa is associated with bending down toward what the world often avoids seeing. There are such overlooked places in you as well. Perhaps tiredness you do not take seriously because it does not look dramatic. Perhaps loneliness covered by efficiency. Perhaps a creative longing you postpone because it seems impractical. Conscious life begins to include these inner outskirts. Not only the presentable, smiling, effective parts, but also the ones sitting somewhere at the edge of your attention, waiting for you to stop pretending they are not there. Tenderness does not exclude discipline. On the contrary, it gives discipline a human face. You can decide to care for yourself more consistently, not because you are a project to repair, but because your life is worthy of presence. You can learn new habits without contempt for old ones. Old habits were often once an attempt to cope. Even if they limit you now, they arose from a need for protection, relief, or belonging. When you understand this, it becomes easier to change them. You are no longer fighting an enemy. You are speaking with a part of yourself that does not yet know it is possible to live differently. And when that part begins to trust you, resistance slowly softens. Resistance softens not through force, but through consistent presence. This matters because many people try to change themselves as if training a disobedient animal. They tighten the plan, punish themselves for stumbling, compete with an imagined version of themselves. For a while, adrenaline works. Then the old rhythm returns, and with it a feeling of failure. Yet deep transformation is rarely born from violence against oneself. It needs conditions in which truth can come out of hiding. When you stop frightening yourself, you begin to hear what truly requires change and what is simply asking for soothing. It is worth recognizing the difference between ambition and calling. Ambition itself is not bad. It can be a healthy force that helps you develop talents, become braver, and make an effort. But when it separates from the heart, it turns life into an endless climb up a ladder, leaning against someone else's wall. Calling has a different taste. It is not always easy, not always immediately profitable, not always understandable to those around you. Yet deep down it gives a sense of meaning, as if some part of you were saying, "Here, my strength is not being wasted." Steve Jobs emphasized the importance of work you love, but love for work does not have to mean a spectacular career. It may express itself in doing something with full presence because you feel that through that gesture the world becomes a little more true. Not everyone finds meaning on a grand stage. Someone may discover it by repairing bicycles in a small workshop, where they know the story of every regular customer. Someone else brings meaning into the world by arranging flowers at a market in such a way that a tired passerby stops for a moment and remembers beauty. Another person writes short messages to people after loss, not great sermons, just a few sentences that do not run away from pain. Spirituality does not have to look like detachment from daily life. Sometimes the most spiritual thing is that a person does an ordinary thing with an extraordinary quality of presence. Intention gives meaning even to simple actions because it asks, "Am I truly here?" Creativity is one of the paths of intention. Not only art, music, books, or inventions, creativity is a way of participating in life in which you do not mindlessly repeat inherited patterns, but bring something from your own inner world. You can speak creatively, rest creatively, resolve conflict creatively, build the atmosphere of a home creatively. Nikola Tesla saw invisible possibilities, currents and connections in the world. You do not have to be an inventor to feel a similar tremor of potential. Every human being carries within them a space from which something new may come. A sentence, a decision, a project, forgiveness, courage that did not previously exist in the family story. Often, however, creativity stops at the threshold of shame. You fear that what you make will be imperfect, that someone will judge it, ridicule it, ignore it, that if you show your sensitivity, the world will treat it as unnecessary excess. Then it is worth imagining a potter at the wheel, shaping a vessel from wet clay. The first form is rarely final. The clay collapses, bends, needs water, pressure, the raising of its walls once again. No reasonable person shouts at the clay for not becoming a beautiful bowl immediately. The process needs hands. Your creativity does too. If you demand perfection from the first attempt, you will kill life before it has had time to take shape. Creative intention says, I want to be faithful to what wants to come into being through me, even if at first it is awkward. This sentence has great power because it shifts attention from evaluation to relationship with the process. You no longer ask only whether the result will deserve recognition. You ask whether you were honest toward the impulse, whether you gave it time, whether you allowed yourself to learn without immediate shaming. In a world that often shows only polished results, it takes courage to love the stage of the sketch, and yet every mature fruit was once a barely visible beginning. Deepak Chopra often speaks about the connection between consciousness, the body, and the field of possibility. No matter what language you use to describe reality, you can notice one thing. When your attention is scattered, actions lose power. When intention, emotion, and action begin to move in one direction, a different quality appears. It does not guarantee immediate success, but it means you are no longer scattering your life through contradictory signals. You want rest, but glorify overload. You want love, but hide your heart behind irony. You want to create, but each day you give your freshest energy to things unrelated to your truth. Coherence begins by noticing these cracks. So you can treat your life as a composition, not as a list of tasks. In a composition, proportions matter, pauses matter, the return of a motif matters, silence between sounds matters. You cannot play everything at once. Not every desire has the same season. Perhaps now your intention is not to gain more, but to recover rhythm. Perhaps it is not about beginning another project, but about closing one commitment with respect. Perhaps the greatest creativity today will be telling the truth without cruelty. When you live this way, you stop asking only, what have I achieved? You begin asking, what quality did I bring into what I touched? The quality you bring travels farther than you usually see. A person likes to measure influence by what is immediate, a reaction, a result, an answer, the number of people who noticed something. Yet the energy of a decision often works like the smell of bread from a small bakery at dawn. It does not stop passers-by by force, does not speak, does not persuade, and yet it changes the atmosphere of the whole street. Your presence also has a scent, though it is invisible. You can enter a place with tension that makes others tighten their shoulders. You can enter with attentiveness, in which people remember that they do not have to defend themselves immediately. This is not responsibility for other people's emotions. It is awareness that your inner world does not end at the boundary of your skin. That is why daily choices matter so much. Not because every detail must be perfect, but because the tone of life is made of details. The way you set down a cup when you are irritated, whether you look someone in the eye when they are saying something difficult, the decision not to add a sharp sentence, though it would give you a moment of satisfaction, choosing silence instead of another portion of noise. These things do not look like spiritual achievements, and yet they teach your energy a new direction. Great intentions that do not reach small gestures remain suspended above life, like a poster no one reads. Eckhart Tolle reminds us of the importance of the present moment. But presence is not a poetic state, detached from difficult responsibilities. You can be present while paying a bill you do not like. You can be present while holding a sponge and wiping a coffee stain from the table. You can be present in a doctor's waiting room, where time flows differently and people pretend to be calm, each in their own way. Presence means that you do not abandon the moment simply because it is not spectacular. You stop treating life like a waiting room before something more important. What is more important often hides right here, in the way you are with what you would not have chosen from a catalogue of dreams. This does not mean you should give up your desires. Desires are life. The problem begins when the future devours the present. You tell yourself, I will be peaceful when everything finally falls into place. I will be tender toward myself when I deserve it. I will rest when there is nothing left to do. I will begin to truly live when the right conditions appear. But conditions do not become right by themselves if you bring the same absence into them. Conscious creation means that you stop postponing the quality of being until later. You may not yet have what you desire, and still, even now, you can live a little more truthfully. Imagine a person traveling through unknown cities on a night train. Outside the window, the lights of apartment blocks, stations, small shops, closed behind metal shutters flicker by. In the carriage, someone sleeps with their head resting on a backpack. Someone else reads messages. The conductor passes without haste. The traveler does not see the whole route, only the fragment of track illuminated by lamps. And yet the train keeps moving. This is how your life can be. You do not always have a map. Sometimes you have only the nearest stretch of attention. If you demand a view of the entire future, you may miss the signal of the closest station. Intention helps you trust the movement without giving up clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, not to a crowd. His notes carry something intimate, a person responsible for the weight of many matters, reminding his own heart what depends on him and what does not. This distinction can bring you great relief. You do not control other people's moods, the pace of the world, the past, or all the consequences of your decisions. Yet you do have influence over whether you respond with greater awareness, whether you feed resentment or begin to understand it, whether you allow one unsuccessful day to become a verdict on your whole life, whether you return to intention after stumbling. Freedom does not always look like a wide road. Sometimes it is a narrow path between stimulus and reaction. That path widens through practice, not through a single revelation. You can choose small returns every day. When you notice that you are comparing yourself with someone, return to your own breath and your own pace. When you feel the urge to defend yourself immediately, check whether you are defending truth or an image of yourself. When the day breaks into chaos, choose one thing you will do with full attention. It may be closing a window before a storm, folding a shirt, writing one honest sentence, throwing an old receipt out of your wallet, as if saying, "I do not have to carry everything anymore." Such gestures teach the psyche that presence is possible not only on special occasions. Eventually, you begin to understand that the subtle energy of daily decisions creates your future long before external results appear. Every choice strengthens some world within you. When you choose attentiveness, you strengthen a world in which you do not have to be a slave to impulse. When you choose truth, you strengthen a world in which relationships can breathe. When you choose rest without guilt, you strengthen a world in which life is not only duty. These are not abstractions. This is inner architecture. Day by day, you raise walls, let in light, open passageways. And one morning, you discover that you live inside yourself differently. To live inside yourself differently means no longer treating your inner world as a temporary place. Many people live as if their true home will only be built after certain conditions are met. When I lose weight, when I get promoted, when someone loves me, when I stop being afraid, when I finally sort everything out, then I will be able to breathe. But the soul does not want to wait for a perfect renovation. It needs presence now, even if the walls still carry traces of old winters, even if boxes of unpacked past stand in the corners. You can begin living inside yourself before everything is organized. One of the most difficult rooms in this inner home is memory. It holds beautiful things to which you return like warm light. It also contains places you enter carefully because the floor creaks with unspoken words. The past has power when it remains unlived through or unacknowledged. It does not have to rule you openly. Sometimes it works through subtle avoidance. You do not begin because someone once laughed at you. You do not ask because someone once refused you with contempt. You do not love fully because you remember the cost of loss. Conscious intention does not tell you to forget. It invites you to stop allowing old scenes to write every next page. Forgiveness is a delicate word, and it is easily wounded by simplification. It cannot be forced, accelerated, or used like a blanket thrown over an uncleaned room. True forgiveness, if it comes, does not invalidate pain. It does not say that nothing happened. It does not always mean reconciliation or returning to a relationship. Sometimes it is an inner untying of your energy from a place that held you motionless for years. At times, anger must first be acknowledged. The loss must be cried out. The scale of the wound must be seen without minimizing it. Spirituality that tells you to rise above pain before you feel it does not heal. It only teaches elegant numbness. Imagine a person finding an old voice recording on their phone. of someone with whom they shared a difficult history. Their finger pauses above the screen. They could play it, delete it, or hide it again in the digital archive. For a moment, this is not about a technical gesture. It is about the bond with the past. This person does not have to decide immediately. They can sit down, feel the heaviness in their throat, let the memories pass through the body. Only then does the choice become real. In the same way, you do not have to immediately remove everything that hurts. First, see what it still holds inside you. Only awareness gives freedom that is not pretending. Martin Luther King carried a dream larger than the violence that surrounded his time. This does not mean pain disappeared from his path. It means rather that intention can become so deep that it does not allow harm to become the only axis of the world. In your life, this may take a very personal form. Perhaps you will decide not to pass on the coldness you inherited. Perhaps you will interrupt the habit of mocking tenderness. Perhaps you will raise your children, your students, your team, or yourself in an atmosphere that you once lacked. This is how the future is created, not by denying history, but by refusing to repeat its darkest fragments. Memory also needs gratitude, though not the mechanical, imposed kind. Gratitude is not meant to become another obligation for a person who already feels too much. This is not about giving thanks for everything. Some things were simply painful, unjust, unnecessarily cruel. Yet over time you may discover gratitude for what survived in you, for the ability to laugh despite heavy seasons, for the people who appeared like bridges over water when you did not know how to cross, for small moments when life explained nothing but gave you breath, someone's dog laying its head on your knee, the smell of rain on warm pavement, a song heard through an open window. Gratitude cleanses intention because it shifts attention from lack to participation. It does not remove desires. It does not tell you to settle for anything. It only means that you are no longer creating the future from a place of endless deficiency. If you believe that nothing is ever enough, every achievement will be only a short stop before the next hunger. When you can see that there are already things that nourish you, your desires become calmer. They no longer have to prove that life has value. They can become the natural movement of growth, like a tree that grows not because it despises its root, but because it is alive. Healing memory leads to greater freedom in choices. You no longer choose a partner only because they know the rhythm of your old wound. You do not choose work solely to prove to someone that they were wrong. You do not reject an opportunity simply because it resembles an old shame. You begin to ask, does this choice belong to the present me, or to the part that is still trying to win an old conversation? That question can be like opening a window in a stuffy room. Air does not solve everything, but suddenly you can breathe. And where breath returns, possibility returns. Possibility is quiet before it becomes an event. It often arrives as a barely perceptible maybe. Maybe I can tell the truth. Maybe I do not have to keep choosing according to the old fear. Maybe my life did not end in the place where I was once wounded. Maybe it is not too late to learn a new way of being. This small maybe can be the beginning of a great transformation because it loosens the inner verdict. A person who believes everything has already been decided does not create. They repeat. Intention opens a crack through which fresh air enters life. Conscious creation does not mean that thought alone is enough. That would be too simple and unfair to the mystery of life. Thought is the seed, emotion is the moisture, action is the soil, and time is the weather you cannot control. All these elements are needed, and still not every fruit ripens according to plan. This does not mean intention is weak. It shows rather that you are not the solitary ruler of reality. You are a co-participant. You can prepare the soil, choose the seed, water it, protect it from neglect, but you cannot command the sun to shine faster. Humility does not take away power. It protects it from arrogance. Many people want to create their lives, but deep down they want to skip the stage of consequence. They want abundance, but do not want to look at their patterns of chaos. They want love, but avoid vulnerable conversation. They want peace, yet every day they choose stimuli that tear their attention apart. They want health, but treat the body like a servant without a voice. This is not an accusation. Each of us has such places of incoherence. The question is, whether you have the courage to see them without immediately explaining them away. Coherence begins when you stop negotiating with truth simply because it requires a change of habits. Imagine the captain of a small boat who for years has sailed by other people's lights on the shore. Each seemed to be a sign: there you should go, there is success, there safety waits, there they will admire you. One night, fog falls low and the lights disappear. At first, there is panic. Then the captain remembers the compass he almost never used, because he was too busy looking at the shores. Your intention is such a compass. It will not show every wave, but it will remind you of direction. When the outer world becomes unclear, the question becomes even more important: what is my north? For one person, north will be truth. For another, love, creativity, freedom, service, peace, God, dignity, healing. The name matters only when it leads into life. You can say that your value is family, and yet be forever absent with those closest to you. You can speak of freedom while making every decision dependent on every comment. You can declare spirituality and treat people instrumentally when they stop fitting your image of growth. Intention requires value to become practice, not a large inscription on an inner wall, but the way you answer the phone when tired and the way you refuse when you truly cannot. Albert Einstein reminded us that a problem cannot be solved from the same level of thinking that created it. In inner life, this means that you will not free yourself from fear if you use only the tools of fear: control, predicting every scenario, constantly securing yourself against pain. You need a different level. Perhaps it will be trust, perhaps presence, perhaps consent to uncertainty, perhaps a conversation with someone who helps you see what you cannot see alone. Intention does not replace help, learning, or action. It gives them direction. It makes you treat not only symptoms, but slowly change your way of being in the world. Daily creation also includes the choice of language. Words are vessels of energy. Some carry life, others leave dust behind. Notice how often you say, I have to, I should, always, never, I cannot do it. This is just how I am. These words close space before you check whether there really is no door. You can begin to speak differently, not artificially positively, but more truthfully. Instead of I have to handle everything, you can say, I choose one thing now. Instead of I failed again, I am learning to return more quickly. Instead of this is just how I am, I know this pattern, but it is not all of me. Language is not an ornament of thought. It is the chisel with which you carve available possibilities. This is not about controlling every sentence and becoming afraid of your own words. Awareness without tenderness would become another cage. Rather, allow language to show you where your intention needs cleansing. If you constantly speak of fighting, perhaps your body no longer knows how to live without tension. If you often repeat that you have no choice, check whether there truly is none, or whether every choice simply carries a price you fear. If you call yourself a problem, try to see the person beneath the label. The inner world listens to your words the way a child listens to adults at the table. It is worth speaking in a way that does not wound what is most delicate in you. What is most delicate often leads closest to truth. The paradox is that for years you may protect your sensitivity by closing it behind thick walls, only to discover later that together with pain, you also cut off joy. The heart cannot be selectively numbed. When you do not want to feel fear, you gradually lose access to wonder as well. When you run from sadness, joy becomes shallower because it is afraid to settle in a place where tears are not allowed. The energy of intention needs sensitivity, not as weakness, but as the ability to receive life across a fuller range. Sensitivity does not mean having no boundaries. This matters because many delicate people believe their task is to receive everything. Other people's moods, tensions, expectations, unspoken resentment. Then they are exhausted and blame their own tenderness, though the problem was not tenderness but lack of protection. Sensitivity without awareness becomes overload. Awareness without sensitivity turns into cold analysis. You need both, a heart that feels and wisdom that chooses what to let in more deeply. Not every emotion encountered in the world has to be taken home by you. You can imagine a museum conservator standing before an old painting. They do not scrub the canvas violently because they know there is something fragile beneath the layers of dirt. They use patience, small movements, the right light. They remove what is foreign without destroying the original beauty. This is how you can treat your own soul. Over the years, other people's opinions, unlived emotions, haste, shame, and ambitions not fully yours have settled upon it. If you approach with aggression, you will damage the painting. If you do not approach at all, the dirt will become your identity. Tender precision is needed to see what is not you and to remove it layer by layer. In this process, silence appears, not always comfortable. At first, silence sometimes seems empty because you are accustomed to constant stimulation, but if you remain, it begins to reveal subtle sounds. A thought you never allowed to finish. Grief that waited for attention. Gratitude so modest it is almost invisible. Jesus withdrew to deserted places. Buddha sat beneath a tree. Many mystics and sages of different traditions knew the value of solitude. Not because the world was unimportant, because without moments of distance, a person easily confuses the voice of the crowd with the voice of God, fashion, truth, or their own heart. Silence does not have to last long. You do not have to build another requirement out of it. Sometimes a moment is enough before you open your mouth. A moment when you look at steam rising above a bowl of soup and allow the day to catch up with your body. A few breaths in a car parked outside your home before you go inside and carry all your tensions further. A short walk without headphones, during which you hear your own steps on gravel. Such small spaces are like wells. If you regularly pass them by, you begin to live on the surface of desire. If you sometimes stop beside them, you discover water. Inner water is contact with what does not need to be proven. You may call it soul presence, deep consciousness, a spark of God, the true self. Names matter less than experience. It is the state in which, for a moment, you are not the sum of tasks, failures, plans, other people's judgments, and your own fears. You are, simply, without decoration. Eckhart Tolle would say you return to now. Someone else would say you return to prayer without words. Another person would say the nervous system stops fighting. Each language touches a fragment. You can simply feel that, for a moment, you do not have to earn the right to exist. From this space, action looks different. It is no longer a desperate attempt to patch a lack. It becomes a natural movement of energy. You help because you feel connection, not because you want to be indispensable. You create because something wants to flow through you, not because lack of admiration would be the end of the world. You rest because life needs rhythm, not because you finally deserved it. You speak the truth because lying costs too much soul. This does not mean everything becomes easy from now on. It means action has a root, and a person with a root can sway in the wind without immediately falling out of the earth. Perhaps that is why it is so important not to turn spiritual growth into an escape from humanity. You will have days when intention becomes unclear. You will speak too quickly, react from fear, lose patience, return to old ways. Do not turn this into a drama or proof that nothing is changing. A plant does not stop growing because one day is cloudy. Return. This word is one of the gentlest and strongest tools. Return to breath, to truth, to the body, to values, to the conversation that needs repair. Every return strengthens the path. In the end, the point is not to never move away from yourself. It is to find your way back more and more quickly. The road to yourself does not lead only through the inner world. Sooner or later it must pass through the world. Through work, money, responsibilities, decisions, places where your spirituality stops being a beautiful idea and becomes a way of behaving under pressure. It is easy to speak of peace when nothing presses, harder when someone fails to keep a promise, when bills arrive faster than solutions, when your effort goes unnoticed. That is when intention stops being a mood. It becomes practice. This is not about always keeping a perfect tone. It is about not handing your whole self over to blind impulse, even in difficulty. Money is a special field of intention because it carries many stories. For some it means safety. For others, guilt, power, freedom, fear, possibility of choice, or proof of worth. Money itself is neither spiritual nor unspiritual. It is an energy of exchange to which human beings give meaning. You can earn from fear and spend from emptiness. You can have little and still share with dignity. You can strive for abundance with a clean intention of creating, caring, developing, and being free. What matters is to ask yourself honestly, does my relationship with money build life, Or does it feed tension, comparison, and a constant sense of lack? Imagine a person choosing a used armchair at a market. They are not looking for the most expensive or the most impressive one. They sit in several, check where the body breathes, touch the worn places on the armrests, ask the seller about the history of the piece. Finally, they choose the one that does not look perfect, but fits the corner by the window where they have long wanted to read. It is a small purchase, and yet it expresses a new kind of relationship with matter, not possessing for the sake of impression, but choosing for life. Many decisions can be made in this way, not asking only whether something impresses, but whether it serves the truth of your home rhythm and heart. Personal development often focuses on effectiveness. Goals, strategies, habits, measurable progress. All of this can be helpful if it does not lose contact with the soul. Without it, effectiveness becomes a machine that produces achievements, but not necessarily meaning. Spirituality, on the other hand, if it despises structure, can dissolve into dreams. You need a bridge. Intention is such a bridge. It connects inner meaning with an outer step. If you long for health, a vision of lightness is not enough. You need specifics. If you want to create, you must find time, tools, rhythm. If you long for peace, you must stop inviting into your day everything that constantly destroys it. Viktor Frankl wrote about meaning not as a luxury for peaceful times, but as a force that allows a person to survive and remain human. Meaning does not always mean a grand mission. Sometimes it is the reason you get up and do one good thing despite heaviness. For someone, meaning will be raising a child in warmth they themselves never received. For someone else, completing studies after years of interruptions, not for the diploma on the wall, but as proof of faithfulness to themselves. Another person may find meaning in caring for a sick animal, in patiently watering a community, in creating music heard by only a handful of people, but touching them truly. Meaning is not always loud. Often it has calm eyes. Working with intention also includes failure. This is the place where it is easiest to see whether your worth was attached to the result. When something does not work out, you can treat yourself like a defective object or like a human being in process. Failure does not have to be the end of the story. It can be information, correction of direction, an invitation to humility, sometimes protection from a road that looked beautiful but was not yours. Not every closed gate is punishment. Sometimes it is a boundary beyond which you would lose too much of yourself. Of course, when it hurts, you do not have to look for meaning immediately. First, you can sit with disappointment. Wisdom will come later. Mahatma Gandhi taught that the means and the end are inseparable. You cannot reach true peace by the road of inner violence. You will not build freedom by constantly enslaving yourself with the compulsion to prove. You will not create love through manipulation. This law works subtly but constantly. The energy of the road enters the result. So if your goal is a deep, conscious, and good life, check not only where you are going, but how you place your feet. Are you becoming more present along the way, or only more tense? Do your ambitions widen your heart or narrow it? Will the success you desire have a place to live inside you? Ultimately, matter is not the opposite of spirit. It is the place where spirit can become visible. The way you earn, rest, eat, hold a conversation, organize space, keep your word, apologize, begin again, all of this is a field of practice. You do not have to wait for ideal conditions of spiritual focus. Your life is already a temple, a workshop, a school, and a garden. Sometimes there is clutter in it, dust, unexpected guests, and cracked plans. And yet it is precisely here that intention learns a body. Here, the invisible becomes choice. Here, you begin to understand that creation is not an escape from daily life, but an entering into it with greater love. Entering daily life with greater love does not protect you from uncertainty. It is important to say this honestly. Spiritual growth is sometimes presented as if a person, after finding intention, should always walk calmly, with clear eyes, without trembling inside. Yet courage often trembles. A true yes may be spoken quietly with a dry mouth. A decision aligned with the soul may awaken fear because it leads beyond the known arrangement. Uncertainty does not have to mean you chose wrongly. It may mean you are leaving a cage that was narrow but familiar. Fear deserves to be treated wisely. It is not an enemy to be humiliated. It can be a guardian of experiences, a memory of pain, a protective mechanism. The problem begins when the guardian starts ruling the whole kingdom. If you hand every decision over to fear, you will choose predictability instead of life. If you dismiss it entirely, you may overlook important signals. Awareness consists in conversation. You can say to fear, "I see you, I know you are trying to protect me, but you cannot decide everything alone." There is great maturity in this simple inner sentence. Not battle, not submission, but leadership. Imagine a person standing at the entrance to a room where they are about to sing in front of others for the first time. They are not a professional singer. For years, they hummed only in the car when no one could hear, and behind closed windows while cleaning. Now they are holding a page with lyrics, their hands are cold, and 1,000 reasons to leave appear in their mind. Then they remember that they did not come there for perfection. They came so they would no longer abandon the part of themselves that always wanted to have a voice. Maybe the voice will tremble. Maybe someone will not understand. And yet, after the first note, the world is already different because a person has stopped being a prisoner of their own silence. Your acts of courage may look similar. They do not have to be heroic. Sometimes courage is sending an application, though shame says you will embarrass yourself. Sometimes it is picking up medical test results instead of pretending that not knowing gives safety. Sometimes it is admitting to a loved one, "I am not coping as well as I show." Sometimes it is putting down the mask of competence and asking for an explanation. Fear of failure often feeds on the belief that your worth depends on flawlessness. But life does not require flawlessness. It requires participation. A person who makes no mistakes usually does not move far beyond what they already know. Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Maya Angelou, and many people both famous and entirely anonymous showed that courage is not the absence of suffering or a guarantee of victory. It is the choice not to allow fear to be the only author of action. In your story, this choice may happen without witnesses. No one will see how much it cost you not to repeat a family pattern. No one will award you a medal for not responding to verbal violence with violence. There will be no applause for the day when, instead of disappearing into an old habit, you call someone and tell the truth. And yet it is precisely there that the great work of the soul takes place. Uncertainty can become a teacher of trust. Trust does not mean the conviction that everything will go your way. That would be more like a trade agreement with fate. Deeper trust says, even if I do not know the whole road, I can be with myself on the next stretch. I can respond, learn, ask for help, correct course, or I can meet difficult events without immediately assuming they are evidence against me. This trust is not naive. It has open eyes. It sees risk, but does not give it the throne. It trusts not only that life will be gentle, but also that there are resources in you that you will not know until you need them. You might ask yourself now, without pressure, where is my life asking for courage? Perhaps the answer will come quickly. Perhaps you have carried it for a long time. Or perhaps it will arrive as an image, a sealed envelope you are not opening, a phone number you are not dialing, an instrument standing in the corner, a document saved on your computer under the name Someday, a pair of running shoes covered with dust, a plant on the windowsill that survives despite neglect and somehow embarrasses you with its will to live. Sometimes the objects around us know what we are silent about. They do not judge. They remind. When you take a courageous step, you do not have to feel strong immediately. You may feel soft, exposed, uncertain. Allow that to be. The energy of intention does not always resemble fire. Sometimes it is like a small ember hidden beneath ash. If you disregard it, it will go out. If you blow too hard, you will scatter it. It needs calm care. Courage matures in the same way. Do not feed it with contempt for fear. Feed it with truth, presence, and small action. Then, over time, you will discover that you do not have to wait for a day without fear. You can walk with fear at your side, but without allowing it to choose the destination. When you continue walking despite fear, you begin to learn the taste of coherence. It is one of those words that sound simple, yet include an entire life. Coherence means that your declarations, choices, relationships, daily rhythm, and way of treating yourself gradually stop living in separate worlds. This is not about perfection. Perfection is rigid while coherence breathes. A coherent person also makes mistakes. sometimes answers too sharply, sometimes loses attentiveness, sometimes chooses the easier path. The difference is that they do not build a new home out of these departures. They return, they learn, they repair, they need the mask less and less because they trust truth more and more. Coherence can be uncomfortable at first because it requires giving up certain benefits. If you stop pretending, not everyone will be pleased. If you begin speaking more clearly, someone may miss your old availability. When you choose a calmer rhythm, part of the world will call it lack of ambition. When you stop taking responsibility for other people's emotions, there will be people who accuse you of coldness. This is natural. Every change in your energy moves the system in which you have functioned until now. It does not mean you should harden. It is enough not to confuse someone else's discomfort with proof that you are doing something wrong. Imagine an orchestra during rehearsal, where one instrument has played too quietly for years because it was afraid to disturb the whole. Everyone has become used to that absence. When it finally begins to sound more fully, for a moment it seems that something is wrong. The conductor has to hear the music anew. Something similar happens in your environment when you reclaim your voice. People accustomed to your silence may call your truth exaggeration. Those who benefited from your lack of boundaries may see your no as an attack. But your task is not to play more quietly, simply because someone built their comfort on your being muted. Coherence asks you to enter your own sound without needing to drown out others. Jesus spoke of fruits by which a tree is known. This is a beautiful image of intention. It is not enough to speak of love, awareness, light, awakening. Life asks about the fruits. Do people feel more used or more seen around you? Do your choices nourish peace, or only your need to be right? Does growth make you gentler toward fragility, or more superior toward those at another stage? Spirituality can subtly become a new ego if a person begins using it to feel above others. Coherence brings everything down to earth. It shows that true awareness appears not in vocabulary but in the way of being. You do not, however, have to take on the burden of being an example for everyone. That would be another trap. It is enough that you become truer in your small part of the world. Perhaps your practice will be ending the day honestly, without replaying every mistake in your mind like an indictment. Perhaps you will make sure that simple and kind words are heard more often at home. Perhaps you will learn to receive payment for your work without embarrassment. Perhaps you will stop answering everything immediately, as though availability were the measure of love. Every such decision is a thread. Threads become fabric. Fabric becomes daily life that begins to cover you instead of chafing you. Conscious creation also includes what you do not choose. Renunciation is an underrated form of intention. When you say no to what scatters you, you make room for what nourishes you. When you stop participating in conversations built only on complaining and gossip, you protect the quality of your mind. When you do not buy another thing merely to silence emptiness, you regain contact with the true need. Renunciation does not have to be loss. Sometimes it is the opening of a hand that has held a stone for so long it has forgotten what it is like to touch something alive. Mother Teresa spoke about doing small things with great love. This sentence is often repeated, but its meaning is very demanding. Great love in a small thing means presence without applause. Washing someone's cup, not from resentment, but as a gesture of order, as long as it does not arise from endless self-sacrifice. Listening to a child telling a complicated story about a stone found on the sidewalk, as if the whole universe truly lived inside that stone. Answering a message carefully, not to look good, but so as not to leave another person in carelessness. Small things show whether your intention has roots. At the end of many days, you will not know whether you have done enough. That is normal. The mind likes accounts. The soul asks more about faithfulness. Did you return to yourself at least once when you could have run away? Did you notice beauty before the day fully closed? Did you avoid using your strength against someone weaker? Did you give yourself even a little humanity? These questions are not a test. They are a way of tuning life before sleep. And if the answer is, today was difficult, I got lost, I did not know how, then you can also place a hand on your heart and say, I will return tomorrow. Not as an excuse, as an intention that knows how to begin again. Beginning again does not always look like a new beginning. From the outside, sometimes everything remains the same. The same road, the same people, similar responsibilities, familiar walls, a calendar full of things that do not disappear just because something in you has understood more. And yet the inner beginning has already happened. It did not consist in escaping life, but in changing the place from which you look at it. When intention becomes more conscious, daily life does not have to change its scenery in order to change its meaning. You bring a different presence into it. There is quiet, immense power in this. Perhaps now you feel more clearly that creation is not a demand placed upon the world, but cooperation with life. You are not a helpless leaf tossed by the wind, but you are not a solitary God who must control everything either. You are a participant in mystery. You have influence over the direction of attention, the quality of words, the willingness to tell the truth, the choice of the next step, the way you treat your own falls and another person's fragility. You do not have influence over everything, and precisely because of that, what you do have influence over becomes sacred, not in the sense of distant grandeur, but in the simplest meaning, worthy of presence. Perhaps your intention after this journey no longer sounds like a grand sentence. Perhaps it is more like a breath. I want to be closer to myself. I want to choose from love more often than from fear. I want to hear the body before it begins to scream. I want to speak the truth without wounding for the sake of wounding. I want to create a life in which my soul no longer has to wait outside the door. Such intentions are simple, but they are not small. Simplicity is sometimes the final stage of wisdom. After all the theories, methods, inspirations, and searching, a person returns to the question, am I present in this one life that has been given to me? Buddha pointed toward awakening from illusion, Marcus Aurelius toward the dignity of inner choice, Frankl toward meaning preserved amid suffering, Jung toward the courage to meet one's own shadow, Gandhi toward coherence between goal and path, Mandela toward a freedom of heart greater than harm, and Maya Angelou toward a voice that must not be surrendered to shame. Each of these lights can illuminate your path for a moment, but no one will walk it for you. This is not sad, it is beautiful. Your life is not meant to be a copy of someone else's wisdom. It is meant to become a place where wisdom is lived, tested, grounded in your hands, your tone, your choices. You do not need to wait for the perfect version of yourself in order to begin. The person you are now is enough as a beginning, with all your tiredness, longing, history, uncertainty, desire, and hope. This very person can choose one more conscious gesture today, can close their eyes for a moment and feel that beneath all roles a living center still exists, can say a kind word to someone without expecting payment, can interrupt a harmful monologue in the head, can go to sleep earlier, not because everything is finished, but because the body is part of the sacred order. Small acts are gates. You pass through them one by one. One day you may look back and see that transformation did not come the way you imagined. Not as a lightning strike after which everything became clear, rather as a series of subtle shifts. You answer differently. You are silent differently. You choose people differently. You explain yourself less to those who do not want to listen. More often you notice when life is beautiful for no reason. You no longer confuse tension with commitment. You no longer believe every thought simply because it arrived loudly. Something calmer appears in your eyes. Perhaps others will not call it spirituality. Perhaps they will simply say that something in you has softened and, at the same time, become stronger. This is the energy of intention, an invisible quality that over time becomes a visible life. You do not have to prove it to anyone. It will be present in the way you rise after a difficult day, how you apologize without humiliating yourself, how you refuse without theatrical guilt, how you dream without lifting your feet from the ground. It will be in your work, if you allow it to serve not only ambition but meaning. In your relationships, if you allow love to meet truth. In solitude, if you stop treating it as proof of lack and begin seeing it as a space for listening. In daily life, if you stop waiting for it to become extraordinary before bringing presence into it. And now, as this story slowly grows quiet, may it not remain in you as another beautiful idea placed on a shelf. May it become a soft movement of attention. Perhaps after listening to it, you will place your foot on the floor differently. Perhaps for a moment, you will not reach for distraction. Perhaps you will ask yourself before answering the world. Perhaps you will remember that you are not a project to perfect, but a living being to meet. And if today you were to take with you only one sentence, let it be simple. My life begins in the quality with which I am present now. From this quality, the next choice will flow. From the choice, a path will arise. And on that path, step by step, you will pretend less, run less, and become more and more yourself. If this audiobook stirred something important within you, leave a comment. Your words may become an inspiration for someone who needs exactly that kind of sign right now. If you want more content about awareness, energy, spiritual transformation, and conscious creation of life, subscribe and turn on notifications. And now, take this one intention with you. Do not let it remain only a thought. Let it become a choice that truly changes your life.